closer, to its closest point, there's an interaction going on with the sun and with the planets. Now, the thing about the approaching comets, and we've got Honda right now. Elenin has just crossed the orbital path of Venus, and it's headed towards the orbital path of Mercury, and it'll go inside of that, and that'll be its closest approach to the sun, and it's actually going to happen on September 11th.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. And Honda will continue on its path, and I can't remember the exact date when it will also be close to the sun. And also, then you've got two comets, that are in the inner planets, in the inner part of the solar system, interacting with the sun, and then we have to include alignments, because we're going to have an alignment on the 26th and 27th of September. And that one, Elenin, will be between the Earth and the Sun. Now, what's important about that is, if it was a normal comet, it wouldn't be on the same plane as the planets, but it is on the same plane. So it will be between the Earth and the Sun. Now, the corona, of course, will expand, and the tail, and it will be pointed in our direction. Is that clear?
Yep.
Because the tail goes away from the sun.
That's right.
So
people think it's the direction, kind of what the comet is, but this is basically just the way the sun lights up the particles that is flowing off the comet, right? Or
yes. So on the 26th, we're gonna. Now, who knows? I don't know what we'll see. It could turn out to be very large, because the sun is going to be like behind it. It could be a huge corona. It could, I don't know exactly what we'll experience then. But the fact that it's on the same plane tells me that we're going to experience something. So that's a big date. I mean, first it will be the 11th. That's when Elenin makes its closest approach to the sun. So if we're going to, an increased solar activity should be happening, that week, leading up to the closest approach.
And how does that work then, do you think, in terms of proximity to the sun? If we're talking about a comet like Elenin being a body that is charged, electrically speaking, how close do you think it has to be in order to kind of begin to interact with the sun? We've seen the sun in many different, when you look at the SOHO satellite imagery and so forth, when a satellite comes close, sometimes you can actually see the sun producing a flare that seems to be like an arm stretching out and reaching for the comet, right? Tell us about that.
That's exactly it. That's a good picture right there. Yes, and I've seen that. I've observed that. So, that's what we're talking about. And then all of the energy that goes with it, that thing you see, it's just part of it. There's all this energy that goes with it, and that affects the Earth, generates more energy here, and then it doesn't take that, it takes the Earth normally, without all of this, external input, is pretty stable. But when you get these things that are like the comet, like the increased activity of the sun, it makes it somewhat unstable. So that's what I'm looking at is, as both of these comets are in the inner part of the system, and who knows, does Elenin get zapped? It could. Mm-hmm. We don't know. We don't know yet.
Could it?
It's not
could it be that we're talking about changings of trajectories or things like that? It might upset the way we calculate?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's quite possible, and Elenin has, a peculiar orbit. It won't return to a nearby, encounter with the Earth.
That's right.
It's just gone, after it leaves here. Now, this thing appeared out of nowhere, and that happens with comets. They're finding new comets and asteroids all the time. But I find it very strange the way it's been treated in the media and by the governments, because there's no news about it at all. at least over here, in our media in the U.S., there's no news. Nobody's saying anything about this comet, which, crossed the Earth's orbit here in the last 10 days or so. And I find, it mystifies me. Why? Why is there no news about it when, I've been around and other comets received an enormous amount of attention for months. And they weren't anywhere near the Earth. And this one's a near Earth object, It's so it's puzzling to me.
Do you think that means it's a conscious decision to keep it out of the media for whatever reason?
Yes, definitely. Why not treat it like every other comet? They announce it. There wasn't a big splash in the media about its discovery, and how other discoveries are treated.
Yeah.
Pretty big announcements in the mass media, and it just never happened, and it's not happening. And I'm wondering, well, folks, what happens on, if September 10th and 11th comes around, and we get something really strange looking up there in the sky because of that tail and the corona, what are people going to think? Are media going to run around then? I mean, there's so much going on that people are kind of jittery.
Yeah.
And so I'm just confused by why they're doing that. And there's some other issues in there too. Well, people have had different theories about it, but I think it's been determined that it is a comet. It's acting like a comet, but you never know what it's going to do as it keeps getting closer. There was a comet some years back that just exploded. I mean, it went from, I think it had increased in brightness like 1,000 or 1,000,000 times, some huge number.
That's right.
And and so we don't know. Things could get very strange in that maybe they will announce it between now and the 11th, but I'm kind of waiting. I'm watching for that.
Now, Will, you speculated and if this is connected with the first, close proximity of Elenin to the Sun, you can clarify for us. But you speculated about possibly 3 days of darkness connected with some of this. Would you expect
that could happen?
Yeah.
It could happen. We don't know what that. I'm not so sure that we've actually experienced a comet like this before. It's on the same orbital plane and going to cross between the Earth and the Sun, the way this one is. So that's why I say it's very uncertain as to what kind of appearance phenomena it's going to produce, and it could happen. And I, kind of getting back to a point you raised earlier, I think we're on the verge, of seeing accelerated volcanic eruptions. That goes along with this whole thing. Well, we get that, and if we get a darkening of the sun, you can be sure we're going to have a couple of years of very cold weather. Quickly. It won't take time. It'll happen very quickly. So that's actually what I'm expecting to happen. There's many volcanoes right now that are more active than they were. There's a number of them that are, that they have an alert on. I think it only takes 3 more major eruptions to change the weather, at least for a few years.
Well, we'll see what happens. Will, obviously, we have, and the strange thing here currently is, as you pointed out before, we have some of these comets, and maybe not comets, but asteroids, or near Earth objects that have been kind of coming in, and they're spotted in the last second, basically. They're like,
yeah, well, that happened
that?
That's right. That happened in June, and people should think this through. They didn't see it until 3 days before it made a close approach to Earth, and when we're talking close approach, we're talking 7,000 miles. That's extremely close.
Yeah.
That people should not be reassured by the things that astronomers reveal about how they work and how little they actually know. because that was kind of embarrassing, that they had to announce that this thing was coming so close. Anything like that, any of those objects, asteroids, and certainly a comet, just will cause devastation, and we know that. And we have no way of knowing, if the orbits get perturbed. We had Comet Honda is also now inside the Earth's orbit, heading towards the Venus orbital path.
Yeah.
That's also in there. And later on, in December, January, we'll have Comet Levy will also make a close approach. I don't remember any time when 3 comets were making close approaches, one right after another, within a few months.
That's right.
That makes this...
Did we, sorry to cut off, Will, I just want to say, did we mention the YU-55 as well? We have a close proximity of that in
that
November.
will come in November 8th, and that's a very close one. That's inside the Moon's orbital path, between the Earth and Moon, and so it's a couple 100,000 miles, but you just don't know. I mean, because it could be pulled off of orbit, and with all these other dynamics that are going on in the inner solar system, we just don't know. And so we just have to keep an eye out for all these things. And I would suggest to people, have some kind of emergency, have a backup plan. Have food, have the things you need, the candles, lanterns, all the things you need to survive. The loss of electricity.
At least for like a week or something like that, maybe a few days, so things can. If we're possible, if something happens and if society overall managed to get back on track and fix things, then it might be definitely worth to have things for a week or so, right? Right, Will?
Yes, you should have some kind of emergency kit, first aid and some, freeze-dried food and things that are light to pack and so on. I lived in Sweden at one time, so I know what it's like in Sweden, and you don't have to worry too much there. Here in the United States, we have to worry because we have a lot of crazy people.
You think so? Yeah.
When you think scenarios here, you have to think of everything, and some of it is pretty awful.
Yeah,
So,
at least you guys there at that point have, not in the whole of the United States, of course, but weather-wise, it's easier. If we talk about wintertime up here, it's definitely detrimental, obviously, if power and things like that goes out. But the human factor is always an unknown, right? We don't know how people will react or panic or what have you. But this is, I guess, what you
generally.
Yeah, go ahead.
They the sort of the myth is that any kind of situation like this, people panic. But the truth is, they don't necessarily panic. They will actually kind of calm down and assess the situation, rationally, and then try to come up with some kind of plan. Now, in some situations, people do panic, and of course, then it's a terrible outcome. But the main thing is, and I know, I mean, I have a Swedish background. Swedes are pretty calm, cool, and collected. And people in Europe tend to be more so than Americans.
Okay.
So it's true.